Okay, lab 2, we will be doing some things to familiarize ourselves with managing switches, connecting the switch, some basic switch configuration stuff. A lot of this is review, but a lot of it's new stuff that we didn't necessarily understand or know what we were doing. We just did it. So the first thing we're going to do is set some passwords on the switch. When you log into the switch right now, you get this kind of prompt and you hit enter. It lets you in. To get to enable, you just type enable and hit enter. Well, we want to put a password on enable. So there are two ways you can set the password. You can type enable, first I go in config mode. Enable password, enable password, and then whatever text string you want the password to be. I said to set it to Cisco. And you can also type enable, well actually let me exit out of here. So now if I type enable, it didn't ask me for the password. Oh, because I was still in enable. So now I'm out of enable mode. So if I type enable, it's going to ask for the password. I type in Cisco, it lets me back into the switch. So if we look at our running config, the problem with that is the password is stored in clear text. So lots of times with these configs, you'll be moving them around, saving backup copies and whatnot. So having your config passwords in the config in clear text isn't necessarily a good idea. So another command you can use, or a different command you can use, is enable secret, and then we'll set that password to class for fun. So if we look at our config now, we see that when we use the enable secret, the password is encrypted, hashed actually. But so we have a enable secret password set and enable password set. So if we log out, which one does it use? Does it use both of them? So here I'm going to type Cisco, which was the first one we set, and that didn't work. Now I'll type secret. Secret. What did I set it to? Class. I set the secret to class. Class. Yeah, so Cisco did not work, which is what we set it to initially. Class did work. So what that tells us is if both the enable secret command and enable password command are used in the config, the enable password command is ignored and it will not work. So it prefers the secret. So if you have them both in there, it's going to use the secret password. Next, we're going to add a user. You know, say we want to force login. So we're going to create a username, admin, password, class, Cisco, and then that'll do it. So some devices, you also have the option of assigning a privilege level, which controls which commands can be run and how much access it gets. On this particular device in the simulator, that was not an option. So let's look at our running config. One thing you may not know is if you're in config mode and you want to run a exec command, you can do show run, and that will run the command without having to exit out of config mode. So if we look now, username, admin, password, Cisco. Is that the privilege level? Maybe that is where I should have put the privilege level. Admin. Oh no, the 0 means it's not encrypted. That's what that means. So now we have a username configured, which we'll use in a little while when we telnet. So now I want to enter the command service password encryption. I'm going to look at the show run, which I exit out again. And you see that now the password is encrypted. I said encrypted because in air quotes, because it's not really encrypted. It's more like hidden. There's a website in the lab sheet where you can go paste this in, and it's going to tell you what the password actually is. So this is not encrypted per se. Oh wait, that wasn't even the right one. Here it is. Not really encrypted. So I'm going to add another user for fun, because that's what the lab sheet says to do. which password is the best. Exit. Show one. So now we see that the password was hidden again. So that is that. I'm pretty sure if you do, this isn't in the lab sheet, but if you do no service password encryption, that doesn't unencrypt the passwords that were encrypted. But now if you create another username, test, password, test, exit. So now this one should not be encrypted. So yeah, so there we go. Now it's not encrypted. So that's about passwords and creating users. Next thing we want to do is enable remote access to the switch. So if we look at our switch, that's not what we look at. If we look at our running config, our switch does not have any IP addresses set anywhere. So the question is, where do we assign the IP address? Do we assign it to a particular port? If we assign it to a particular port, does that mean only users connected to that port can connect? Or how do we do it? Well, if you look in the book, you should know that we assign the IP address to VLAN 1. You see right here, interface VLAN 1. Right now, there's no IP address. So I'm going to configure IP address in VLAN 1 for VLAN 1. Same command we use on the routers to configure an IP address. And then we need to do a node shutdown. So now my switch has an IP address in VLAN 1. I also said we should configure a configure for telnet, so that involves configuring the VTY lines. So we'll configure that line, VTY 04 in this case. We want to set a, what do we want to do? We want to enable telnet. Let's transport input telnet. We'll do telnet first. Transport input telnet, and we want to change login to local so that it uses the local user accounts. In 220, we would type login, and then we would type password rich. So now let's take a moment to go put a PC on our network. Go ahead and connect it. Alright, give it an IP address. In the same network as VLAN 1, because that's what we need to do. Right now we don't necessarily have a gateway, so we're not worried about that. Wait for it to turn green. So anyway, at this point we've enabled telnet and we've set a username and password on the VTY lines themselves. So we'll test that once this turns green. Alright, so telnet 92.168.1.1, and it's asking me for a password, and I set the password to rich. So in this scenario, everyone has to know the same password to log in. So then if you fire somebody, you have to change the password on all your switches and tell everybody who had access that, hey, here's a new password. So not really a ideal situation. Alright, so now I'm going to manage it through here. Once you're telnet it in, it's just like almost just like you're connected to the console. I'm going to telnet in. I'm going to change the VTY lines to use line. I'm going to change the VTY lines to use local passwords. So I'm going to type login local. Login local. So this is going to force it to use the passwords that we set for the usernames. So let me exit out of here. Exit out again. So now if I log in, you notice now it asks me for a username. Before it just asked me for passwords. Now it asks me for a username, so I can type in one of my usernames that we set, and the password for admin I believe was Cisco. So now I logged in as a user. So if I fire somebody, I just go delete their user accounts off of the switch. So that was creating users and enabling telnet. Our switches in the lab don't support SSH, but in the real world, if you wanted to enable SSH, you could do transport input SSH, and that would enable SSH but disable telnet. Why would you want to do such a thing? Well, SSH is encrypted and telnet is not, so that is why you might want to do such a thing. That's that. One other side note. I'll go ahead and get some stuff, get rid of some, can I even do that? Let's try this. No enable secret. No enable password. So, show run. So there, I took the enable secret and password out of that, and that is interesting to me because if you connect to the switch, now, same thing goes for routers when we get to the routers. Without the enable secret or password set, it will not allow you to get enable mode remotely. So in that case, we need to go back to the console. Go back to the console. Enable secret class, and then find our telnet window, wherever that went. What the? And now we can get in. So that's creating some users and configuring remote access, and a little trick that you might not be aware of, that if you don't have an enable password set, you cannot log in remotely.